Hello students. Today, as part of lecture 6 of your course, we will be having a study of three-dimensional vision. So, as far as the course is concerned, initially this was not part of your course, but to help you deal with the computer vision problems with consideration of geometry, this aspect is very important. My name is Rabi Abraham Mobi. So I am also TA for the robotics group. So the content of today's presentation, mainly there will be 3 parts. First is introduction to 3D vision. So I will discuss about why 3D vision is important. And then from there, I will mention how 3D vision is related to camera models, how image formation also is important, and how camera models is related to three-dimensional measurement, and how three-dimensional measurement can be done using information about camera, which is called camera calibration process. So first, I will discuss about what you learned so far. So what you learned so far is basics of image acquisition. So how you acquire an image and do basic segmentation. Segmentation means you convert the image into binary. So some region will be black and some will be white. And you separate out that region and then derive features from those images. So if you see it as an illustration, if you see an image like this, there is an object within the image. When you process it, you will get a segmented image. In the middle, you will have the object as white and the rest as black. After that, you extract features. So these features are two-dimensional features. So these two-dimensional features are represented by 2 coordinates, that is u and v. So this is u and v in image coordinates. So far you have come till this particular position, but applications, especially like robotics, require not just two-dimensional measurement in image, you also require an extra measurement in 3 dimensions. So if you are able to have a coordinate system, always you do operations with respect to a fixed coordinate system, and you want to find out the 3-dimensional position of the center of this object, assuming that this is a 3-dimensional object which is in space. So the output will be x, y, z of the point which is visible as UV in this particular image. So why 3D vision? So robot is generally considered as a positioning device. So the end effector is positioned with respect to a particular coordinate system. And there is another class of devices called human-machine interface, where you make measurements about the position of your hand or any part of your body, and then make a machine respond to it. And another aspect is microscopy, which is measurement of 3D structure of molecules or small surfaces. For example, you can also do similar tasks with a microscope and measure surface roughness of objects. And another application is space technology, because objects in space are oriented in 3D, and you need to, for example, you need to ask a rover on the Mars to move from point 1 to point 2. So this information has to be obtained in 3D. So all of these systems can use a camera and the images from the camera to obtain 3-dimensional information. So just to show or illustrate the application, I have a video. So this is a robot which has a camera mounted at the end effector, and also a cylindrical object which is held in its end effector. The task which is done here is to first align the robot using the camera, images from the camera, and exactly assemble the object within the tube. So camera information, 2D information from the image is used to measure 3-dimensional information. So another application which you can see here is immersive environment. So on the top left side, you see an immersive environment. This is made using the 3-dimensional drawing or the structure of an industrial robot and the 3-dimensional as well as view of photometric view of a particular room. So you take images and then convert the images into 3-dimensional information, and then you create a 3D environment. Now, using a external control action or an external controller like a mouse or something, you can move the 3D robot, and at the same time, what you see on the right hand side, the actual robot will be moving. So the person who controls the robot can be far away from the place where this task is done. So in applications where it is dangerous for the operator, this kind of setup can be used. So it is used to manipulate objects within this region, which is shown in the bottom right. So these objects are imaged using a camera which is assembled at the top, and the camera takes the images, finds out the 3-dimensional information, and then it draws the 3-dimensional drawing on the top left hand side, so that the user will have a perception how in 3D the view will look like. So the person can rotate the view and see the view from different directions, and then he can manipulate the object. So this is an application of computer vision where 3D information is used. So if you have understood some basic concepts of importance of 3-dimensional information, now let me talk about image formation in a camera. So image formation is basically represented using this particular equation, where you have a 2D representation of image, a particular point in image. This is represented by UV, is related to the 3-dimensional information using this equation. So what you have here is this is a homogeneous coordinate, which means that along with the 2 dimensions, there will be one additional dimension. So this will be 3 cross 1. This matrix will be 3 cross 3. This is a rotation matrix. So this will be 3 cross 3. And this will be a translation vector. This will be 3 cross 1. And this vector will be a 4 cross 1 vector. So you have image information here and 3D information here. So the object you see at X as it is visualized in this particular image, the object which is at coordinate X produces an image at point U, and the camera has a particular coordinate system, and the world has to have another different coordinate system. The coordinate system inside the camera is not accessible for us. So we make measurements in the world coordinate system, and if necessary, during the mathematical operations, you convert it into the image or the camera coordinate system. So going a step further, this transformation also is influenced by the camera parameters. So the camera matrix which you see here, camera matrix has multiple elements in it. So, which is illustrated here. The middle of the image, approximately the middle of the image, where the principal axis of the lens intersects the image, is called the principal point, and this is represented by Cx and Cy. So that figure has two components in the matrix, and the focal length, which influences the size or scaling of the object, appears as Fx and Fy in the matrix. So these two types of parameters contribute to the camera calibration matrix or intrinsic matrix. So every image system or lens system suffers from distortion. So what you see at the top left is an ideal image, but due to the lens system, it will get distorted. What is like the image which is shown in the right or in the extreme right. So if you want to accommodate for the distortion also, the model which you have used will change. The difference will be that you will have different parameters for radial distortion and tangential distortion. So these parameters are an influence on the final position of the image, and that parameters has to be applied using the perspective projection coordinates. So the three-dimensional coordinates of the image is converted into a 2D coordinate, xu and yu, and using these parameters, you can apply distortion and produce a final coordinate in the image. So these expressions you can also see from the OpenCV website. So, but what can you infer from the camera model? So the matrix C, the parameters Ki and P1, P2 are properties of the camera as well as the lens system. But if you see the equation which I have written here, it is possible to come from here to from the 3D coordinates to the 2D image coordinates, but it is not possible to go back from the 2D coordinates to 3D coordinates. What is the problem with it? Each image is actually represented by each image point is represented by two equations, and the 3D coordinates have three particular variables which are to be estimated. So this is an underdetermined system. So you will not be able to solve uniquely for all the three coordinates. So what I have illustrated here is, if the point which is visible in the image is represented by a ray, the point x, which I have shown in the equation, can be any point lying anywhere on this line, which goes till infinity. So you have infinite solutions when you go back from the two-dimensional information to the three-dimensional information. So what is the alternative? So if you want to have the three-dimensional information, what you will do is, you will intersect the first ray with another ray. So how is this possible? You can either see the view from one direction and then change the view of the camera and see from another direction. And there will be two rays, and the two rays will intersect at one particular point, x, y, z. And you have two image points, U1, V1, as well as U2, V2. You can use these information, especially U1, V1, U2, V2, to calculate the three-dimensional position. So this is called stereo vision. It is possible to do this using two different cameras, or using the same camera taking image from two different views. So the equations which I have written here will change slightly in the way that so U will become U bar and C will become C bar. So this complete matrix will become T bar, and this is X. So this U bar will have information about two different image points. This will have information about two different cameras, if there are two different cameras that are used, or the camera information from a single camera. And this will have the extrinsic information from two different cameras, if there are two cameras, or from the same camera and the relative position of the same camera. And this is the 3D point which you need to obtain. So the expression shown here, you can just stack the coordinates and make these U bar, C bar and T bar. And then now you have here you have 2 plus 2 equations and 3 variables. So you can directly solve it and you can obtain the position for X. So what is missing here? So you need to obtain these information. You can do this only if you obtain the information about C bar and T bar. So whatever I have shown here, if you obtain information about the camera matrices and T bar, it will be possible to calculate the three-dimensional information from two image points. So in camera calibration, so now camera calibration is important. Now the rest of the session I will be discussing about camera calibration. So what you estimate is the matrix C of the camera, the distortion parameters, as well as the extrinsic parameters Q and T. So these three set of parameters will combinedly represent a particular camera and its configuration. In a special case, if you fuse this information of C and T together, it can be another matrix P, and if you want to estimate it, there is a different method of doing that, which is called direct linear transformation. So the process of determination of C, AI, PI, and P2 is normally referred to as camera calibration, and there are famous methods which are used. So one of it is size method. This is a very old method, 1987 it was proposed, and this was quite popular till Zhang proposed this method, which is Zhang's method in 2000. So I'll be explaining how Zhang's method will be applied. The basics of Zhang's method is that if you have an image of a calibration grid, so let me explain this. So a calibration grid is an object which is black and white, which will have squares, and you know the position of each corner in a coordinate system which is defined on the this is X, this is Y, and this is Z. So you know the relative position of these 3D coordinates with respect to this coordinate system. And if you have, since it's a planar board, Z is 0 and Z axis coordinate will be 0. And this camera, the equations governing camera image formation will change as in this particular fashion, because Z is 0. So SU is equal to SC into Q into the extrinsic matrix into x, y, and 1. So now you can convert it into another form where the image is related to the 3D coordinates using a matrix called H, which is homography. This homography matrix is a 3 cross 3 matrix, which is related to your camera calibration matrix and the columns of your rotation matrix Q. So rotation matrix has a particular property that rotation matrix, each column Q1, Q2, Q3 are orthogonal to one another. So that means Q1 dot Q2 or Q2 dot Q3 or Q1 dot Q3 is equal to 0. At the same time, this is orthonormal also. So the norm of Q1, norm of Q2 and norm of Q3 is equal to 1. So these conditions are applied here to get the equation, first equation, using first orthogonal condition to vectors give scalar product 0 and the normal conditions. So you will get two sets of equation. And H1, H2, H3 are the columns of the homography matrix. So homography is a matrix which relates these 3D coordinates. There is a homography is a relationship between the image coordinate as well as the 3D coordinates. So it is possible to estimate homography using multiple correspondence. If you have an image like this, you know the image coordinate, you calculate the image coordinate, and then you have the 3D coordinate. By doing correspondence between these two, you can obtain the homography matrix. And so, in the expressions which I have shown, the two constraints had this particular matrix, which is C inverse transpose into C transpose. So, this is a function, this is in terms of camera internal matrix parameters. So, if you consider it as a matrix and then consider the first equation, you can rewrite it in the form of this H tilde into B is equal to 0, where you convert all the unknowns as a vector, B, and all the knowns, you already estimate the homography, all the knowns as a vector S tilde, and then you equate it to 0. You have one equation. Now from the second constraint, considering the normal conditions, you have similar equation, and then you get another equation is equal to this S tilde I, S tilde minus S tilde J is equal to 0. So you have two different equations. So what you do is you stack one over the other, and once you stack them one over the other, you get a 2 cross 6 matrix into a 6-dimensional vector is equal to 2 cross 1 vector of zeros. So you have two equations and 6 unknowns. So in that case, it is not possible to determine all the values for all the variables of D, but it is possible in another way. So you cannot use a single image of a calibration grid and solve for all the parameters of the intrinsic matrix. So instead, what you do is you consider multiple images and you have multiple homographies, and from each homography you get two equations. So if you have 6 equations and you have 6 unknowns, so you can solve for all the parameters which is in this vector B. So once you estimate the parameters, the components of vector B, you can use the earlier definition of B to come back and estimate the other parameters Cy, Fx, Fy, Cx, etc. using this particular, at the same time using a particular scaling factor. The solution for AB is equal to 0 is obtained using singular value decomposition, and this is the the vector, rightmost singular vector corresponding to V matrix. You decompose the matrix A into UD V transpose. So rightmost vector of V corresponding to the lowest singular value is the solution for B, but it is defined only in terms of a scaling factor. So that scaling factor lambda also need to be estimated so that you can have solution for all the terms. So now you have made estimate for the parameters inside the matrix C. Now what is left behind is the radial distortion parameters K1 and K2. So assuming the parameters you have estimated earlier or at the earlier step and the image coordinates, you can calculate the vector D, which is the difference between them, and the matrix D, capital D, which is defined in terms of the image coordinates, and what you see as XU, YU, as I have mentioned earlier, is the perspective projected coordinates, and you can make an estimate for K1, K2 using the equation here by pseudo inverse operation, and you have an estimate for K1, K2. But the values which you have obtained here, if you submit or if you substitute those values in your camera image formation matrix, you will not actually get the initial image. So the reason might be there is error or there is some kind of noise in the system. So at the final stage, you do an iterative refinement using a damped least square method. So if you have multiple images, you have the real coordinate which you have measured from the image, and then you have the calculated coordinates which you calculated using your estimator parameters, but these two are not the same, so you will have a particular value when you subtract them. The calculated coordinate is a function of C, K1, K2. This is the same for all the views, but the terms Q1 and Ti will be specific for each view, and the real world coordinate for calibration grid, you have multiple real world coordinate. So xj is the real world coordinate, and the solution is obtained using a damped least square method. So this completes the camera calibration process. So finally, I would like to give an illustration of the whole process. So what you see here on the top is a practical setup which is used for making measurements. There is a small object which is kept here, and the dimension of that object is to be measured. This is a camera which is kept at the top. So this is part of the robotics project which has been floated to you. I think it is the fourth project which has been floated to you. So what you do first is you capture multiple images from the camera using calibration grid which is kept on the flat surface. So you vary the orientation of the camera and the position of the camera. So that this is the first image, this is the second image which has been obtained like this, third image, fourth image, fifth image. So after obtaining these images, you determine the image coordinates of each intersection, and you get multiple image coordinates for each image, and that many times number of images, you will have that many times of features. Using these input, and also you know the size of this square. So you for example, if you have So you know the three-dimensional coordinate of this point and this point because you know the size, the distance between these particular two cross sections. This is constant for the whole checkerboard pattern, and you also obtain the image coordinates u1, v1 for this particular point and u2, v2 for the next point. And using this value, if you consider this as origin, this will be 0, 0, 0, and the next point will be 0, 0, S. So likewise, you can determine the 3D coordinates of all the points. So when you calculate using the method which is proposed by Zhang, which is also incidentally implemented in OpenCV, you get the output of the C as of C matrix as this particular in this particular form. So yeah, there is small mistake. This will be the term in the term here. So Cx and Cy will be approximately at the middle of the image. So the image or the camera which I used was of resolution almost 1200 into 1000 pixels. And these are Fx and Fy are the focal length or the focal length as well as scaling along X and Y direction. These will be approximately equal because most of the commercially manufactured cameras will have uniform scaling across X and Y direction. The reason being the physical pixel which is detecting the light has the same square shape. If it is not square, this will be varying. And the parameters for distortion will be K1 is equal to minus 0.4, K2 is equal to 0.3, and likewise. And the tangential distortion values will be very less, but the radial distortion values would be quite high. So, coming to the next part of the research. So, the output of Zhang's method during optimization, the Q matrix is represented as a rotation vector, as a Rodriguez-Euler Rodriguez parameter vector, and it is a three-dimensional vector. So that is shown here as Ri. So this is one of the output. So you get C and distortion matrix which is unique for across all the images, but for each image you will get one set of Qi and Ri, or Qi and Ti. So for the first image, the rotation vector was given by this value, and the translation vector was given by the next value. So this means that along X direction of the optical center, the camera has been shifted by only very less distance, slightly larger distance about Y, and the distance shifted from the Z-axis is approximately 82 mm. So looking at the setup earlier, which I had shown earlier, so the camera is approximately 82 millimeter above the place where the object has been imaged or the calibration grid was placed. So final result, whether your camera calibration has been successful or not, or whether it is satisfactory or not, is measured by reprojection error. So this is what is measured using like image processing techniques using the image, and this is what you have calculated. You are using whatever you have estimated, that is the camera intrinsic matrix and the distortion parameters, etc. And this value is approximately 0.29 pixel for the first image. The first image is shown here on the left hand side, and the corners are detected. Each corner is detected 1, 2, 3, like approximately 54 corners are there. All 54 corners are detected. And this method of detection uses some of the aspects which you have learned in the earlier lectures. After that, what you do is you undistort the image. If you undistort the image will look something like this. So there will be some region within the image or within the output image which does not have any pixels. So but the lines will be straight in the output image. So this is a practical application of the camera calibration method. And finally, I would suggest some further reading if it is possible. Camera calibration, 3D reconstruction. There are many aspects which are involved in it. This small time which I have, or the small duration of time which I have, is not sufficient to cover all the aspects. I have given a brief overview, but you can use it as a foundation to build up your understanding about three-dimensional computer vision. So, whatever I have discussed about Zhang's method and much details about it is available in a report which he has created as part of Microsoft, and that is also having the same title, a flexible new technique for camera calibration. So to understand more about the method I have discussed, you can refer to this report. Actual publication related to this work came out in 2000, but the report predates that, and the report has been updated also. As well as another important aspect is the report has more details which will help you to understand whatever we have discussed very easily. And a very important book which these days everyone in computer vision who does geometry computer vision refer is Zimmerman and Hartley. So this particular book has very detailed description about the multiple view geometry, and there's something called direct linear transformation. So that you can also learn from Zimmerman and Hartley. So direct linear transformation, I mentioned in between, if the camera intrinsic matrix and the extrinsic matrix are combined together, you use direct linear transformation to extract the projection matrix. You can also use the same method for extracting homography. But in the paper by Zhang, so homography is estimated by first through direct linear transformation, and then it is refined using a damped least square method. And the earlier and most popular till the time of Zhang's paper was Zai's method of calibration. This is also quite an interesting read. If it is possible for you, you can refer to it. So there is a mention, there is a page from OpenCV about 3D reconstruction and camera calibration. This is also an interesting page where you can read and have understanding about this, whatever I have discussed about. So I also suggest if you are interested in recent research directions. So I have also been working single image based camera calibration. So this you can obtain in this particular paper. And recently, last 10 or 8 or 9 years, there have been multiple devices which make measurements, three-dimensional measurements, and those are Kinect and RealSense. So these are available in our robotics laboratory. And if you are able to learn more about it, it also applies basic concepts of computer vision to solve these problems. So these are the references, and so you can go through these references if it is required. So this brings me to the end of this discussion. Thank you for your patient and kind listening, for your attention. So I understand that this topic which I have discussed has a lot of mathematical concepts and a lot of depth to understand it. So if it is not possible for you to understand, you should revert back to me or write back to me or discuss with me after the lecture section. So thank you. See you.
Ooh. I have a question.
Yeah, please.
No, I don't.